The world has ended. I am John Pollock alongside Wei Ting, and welcome to our review of the final pay-per-view of 2023 from Long Island, New York. How are you tonight, Wei?
I'm okay overall. Maybe coming down with a bit of a cold, so could be better. But how about you, John?
I'm actually also coming down with something as well. So
We
what?
must have caught it on Friday when we were out at
Because you and I were hanging out together, and we both
yeah.
got each other sick somehow. Well,
We
that's
had
I
a
guess
rare day off on a rare Friday off, and decided to meet up with some friends, and maybe we both got sick, so we will never go out again.
we got to take in some live music.
Yeah,
some friends,
mm-hmm.
catch up. It was a good time.
Had a great time. Yes, worth it.
Wei gave me a drive home. Just such a kind soul.
Of course.
Yeah.
Think nothing of it.
Good rate as well. I mean, when you gave me the invoice at the end, I was like, reasonable.
I mean, as long as you tip.
By the way, before we get into things, we're going to be talking about a lot on here. I just want to give a shout out to our pals. Look at this.
You got your Eagles Don't Hunt Flies mug.
Yeah, which no flies in the coffee, by the way.
No eagles either.
No eagles either. But yes, so that's
you can. Get
I'm adding it to the rotation.
Well, I mean, I know you're a big mug collector, right? That's sort of your thing.
It's hard to make it into my rotation of mugs. I've got a few I own a lot, but I only have so many that I go to. I loved my All Japan mug that I got in Japan, and I love the New Japan one that WH bought me, and both of them broke, and I still have them here. They're now pen holders.
Yeah, well, you need the handle. That's the thing with mugs, they don't last forever.
All right. Well, we're going to move on. This is going to be a show that we're going to try and keep on the tracks. We obviously have a lot of serious stuff to get into on this show. And before we get into the AEW side of things, I just want to briefly mention, and it was brought up on the pay-per-view tonight, the passing of Masashi Ozawa, who is better known as Killer Khan. And for a generation ago, I mean, a really, a very, very well-known figure. But as much as he had a presence in Japan, it was more so his work in the US that he is, I think, going to be most remembered for. He got his start in the JWA. He had a sumo background and then started in the JWA. This was in early 71, and then would move over to New Japan Pro Wrestling several years later. And it was wrestling under his real name during these early years of his career. And then in 78, he goes to Mexico, and it's from there he segues into the US, and he becomes a really big territorial star and worked in a lot of key territories as Killer Khan. He had a big run in a championship wrestling from Florida. He bounced around all over the place. He went to Mid-South, he went to Stampede, and went to the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, and was part of, when he came in 1980, he was brought in for several matches with Bob Backlund, including the two working Madison Square Garden together back in the end of 1980. And then in 1981, it was the year of, I would say, his most famous feud, and that was with Andre the Giant. And what had happened with Andre was he was getting up from out of bed and broke his ankle. And that's not exactly the most ripe story for an injury angle. I woke up from bed and I broke my ankle. So instead, they credited Killer Khan with breaking his ankle by coming off the top rope and dropping himself onto the ankle. And the two, for forever, they maintained that this was a legit ankle break in the ring, where he was supposed to come down on the chest and he missed and hit the ankle. But this was a very famous angle because you didn't see Andre sell to this degree with like a broken ankle. And they came back and they went all over the territory doing Mongolian stretcher matches, and probably was the opponent most famously associated with one Killer Khan. But his career continued after that. Of course, I mentioned he was in New Japan, came back. He was part of Riki Choshu's group that moved over to All Japan in 1985, and then never went back to New Japan. But he made a good amount of his time was over in the US, but does come back with All Japan for several years. And his last significant run was coming back to the WWF, this time in 87, where he again went around working Hogan when Hogan was champion, and they worked some big arenas together. They worked the Meadowlands, they worked the Cow Palace, the Boston Garden, Philadelphia Spectrum, Rosemont Horizon, And this is an interesting trivia note that he has to his name, is that he can state that in 1987, he headlined the Pontiac Silverdome challenging Hulk Hogan for the WWF title, because in addition to WrestleMania 3, like between 86 and 88, they ran several house shows at the Pontiac Silverdome, obviously a super scaled down version of the Silverdome, but Killer Khan faced Hogan at the Pontiac Silverdome, and his last match ever was November 29th of 87 against Don Morocco at the Pontiac Silverdome. So he has that that trivia note to his name, and then retired in 87. And afterward, he got involved like running his own like restaurants and bars in Japan. And a few years ago, he was actually the subject. He was accused of like a hit and run incident where he was riding his bicycle to his bar, nailed this woman who ended up, she suffered injuries, but it was not life threatening. But yeah, his reasoning was that I was in a rush to work, and he was going to his bar. And sadly, this is where he was working on Friday when he collapsed. And Tokyo Sports is reporting that it was a ruptured artery that he died from. And this is our own Braden Harrington that back in 2018 went to Killer Khan's bar and met the one and only Mr. Khan here. So he was 76 years of age, but a really fascinating career, and somebody that, again, if you go through the history of territory, had a big run in world class. He feuded with Kevin Von Erich there, came in right after the Parade of Champions when Kerry won the NWA title from Ric Flair. But he worked so many different territories, and as much as he had kind of came from Japan, it was his US stuff that was equal, if not more, well remembered. I would say certainly with the WWF runs that he had on those occasions. So we do have a story up on the site that you can check out, and I think I'll be writing something more about Killer Khan coming up. But it was nice to hear that they did mention him on the pay-per-view tonight. So there you go. There's that. And then another story tonight that was coming out from PWInsider.com is that it appears that Kevin Dunn is going to be leaving WWE after decades with this company. I mean, this guy was as much part of the WWE fabric as anyone, I would say, including the McMahons. I mean, this guy's had a longer tenure than most of the McMahon family, but his role was, very, very high up, obviously, as the executive producer and chief of global television distribution. And PW Insider reporting that he informed WWE around Christmas week that he was exiting after more than 3 decades with the company. And the site reports that they're told that a big factor in his decision to retire is changes internally post Endeavor acquisition, and that Dunn was, quote, never going to do anything that was I think he means dictated to him, as opposed to how he personally oversaw production in the past. We're told that this was not an issue of creative, but 2 differing versions of how things should be run from a TV production perspective. And Dunn goes back even further because his father worked with the company. That's going back to 1972. And then Kevin was hired full-time in 1984. So for our lifetimes, Kevin Dunn has been working with the WWF. He's been their executive producer of all programming since 93. I mean, it is his fingerprints that are all over the company, the look, the image, everything. So this is a massive, massive departure for the company. And you have to go back to just a couple of weeks when we were talking about Mark Shapiro's comments about, still looking like at production, and not so much like whether this is Kevin Dunn stepping away on his own volition or something else at play. The fact is, Mark Shapiro did echo that the fact that, he has butted heads with people in production, and seems like that is an area that they do want to, that they still see for cost cutting and such. But I mean, I could certainly, just from those Mark Shapiro comments, I mean, when you're saying you're clashing with or arguing with people in production, that's Kevin Dunn. So I'm sure there was some friction there, and probably, we'll see in time if more comes out over this, because it's such a massive name that you just assumed would be someone, as long as Vince McMahon was there, that you assumed Kevin Dunn would be as well.
And I suppose a move like this kind of tells you the status of a Vince McMahon currently, at least, on a day-to-day operations type of level. Or maybe not. Maybe we can't exactly tell. But, strictly speaking about Kevin Dunn, I feel I probably criticized a lot of what he's done personally. And most people, I would say, in our community probably don't necessarily look at that name or very fondly. But he has created pretty much like our
No,
complete
listen, the
understanding.
WWE you watch, like that is as much as you want to look at like the creative and what comes from Vince, it's like the aesthetic and the look. And believe me, Kevin Dunn had as much influence in there in terms of somebody that Vince McMahon readily relied upon and was clearly a trusted right-hand man. I mean, Kevin Dunn is as much about the makeup of this company, I would argue, as a Vince McMahon. I mean, he's not the final say, but I mean, he's like one heartbeat away from it.
Yeah, yeah, and I imagine there are a lot of things that we might not necessarily credit him for that we all enjoy about WWE production or professional wrestling production that he's had a tremendous influence on. So, yeah, 30 years, it's a lifetime, really.
There was a few years ago, I think I've told this story, but there was a few years ago before a WrestleMania, and I made the pitch about trying to get Kevin Dunn on, and the idea would have been like, the production of a WrestleMania, like take us into like the nuts and bolts of planning your biggest show of the year from a broadcast perspective. And sometimes when I'll make a request and it's not going to happen, they're just not going to respond to you. This one, I think I got an answer within 60 seconds, and it was pretty much, oh, there's no way that's going to happen. And that was my one attempt to interview Kevin Dunn. So now that he is free, more than welcome to join myself and Brandon Thurston any week. He would carry, pending our schedules, of course, if we have a guest booked in advance. But there you go, Kevin Dunn. As well, the Stardom show. Karen Peterson has a full report of Dream Queendom, and I guess they had some technical nightmares. So Stardom, at least for a limited time, they've put the entire 4-hour show up on its YouTube channel. So I don't know how long they're going to leave it there, but you have a chance. And they were offering refunds as well for people. So it sounds like for their big show of the year, just a disaster. But if you're somebody that, I mean, people always ask us, like, for Stardom, what's a great place to start? I mean, this is a show. It's their big show of the year at Sumo Hall, and crowning a new champion with the World of Stardom title vacant going into it, with Maika taking on Suzu Suzuki. So that's up on YouTube, and then you can go read Karen's just phenomenal breakdown and analysis. And she's also got her final Dream Slam monthly coming out Sunday, which is kind of a year-ender look at the state of everything going into the new year. So those are all of the housekeeping notes, and we will let you know a little later on about some of the shows we have coming up this week. But we do have to talk about Chris Jericho, because this was a major story today that grew and was, it's difficult because there is not a whole lot of facts that we can rely on in this case, but there is, a lot of discussion that was generated all day long, and that kind of materialized into a pretty anti-Chris Jericho reaction on the pay-per-view tonight. So if we want to go back, so earlier this week, Nick Houseman had made a comment on his show and made a comparison point of Chris Jericho. And this kind of brought up a story that had been out there years ago that we really had no kind of a basis for, involving Kylie Rae's exit from AEW. And at the time that happened, there were rumors that went around, but nothing that could be confirmed or reported on. And Kylie Rae, at that time, when she got her release from AEW, she did put out a statement in 2019. And in essence, what she included in there was the fact that, noting that, I don't know many rumors, and honestly, I try to stay away from everything. And she explained that while she was leaving AEW, no one was making her leave. And then it was also brought up at a scrum by Sean Ross Sapp to Tony Khan addressing Kylie Rae, and he said it was a very amicable split. She came, she asked for her release, and she has been released. And that's sort of where things stood. And we've seen Kylie Rae. She went to Impact for a period. She's gone to different companies since then, but she did like leave wrestling for a period and then came back as well. So with this comment that was made by Nick Houseman, it brought up these rumors again. And then what added, I would say, substance to everything was that Kylie Rae, in a roundabout way, acknowledged the reports by going to the bottom of this tweet thread that you can see and just including a heart emoji. So this is not her outright confirming this, but it's certainly her not dismissing it or at all negating it. So as you could expect, when you see this, it then exploded afterward, and this became a major trending topic online all day. And we're at a point right now where, typically in these types of stories where an accusation is made, it is, typical that we want to hear both sides from this. We don't even have like the allegation from Kylie Ray's perspective and from her side. Like, we have not even heard from her about what happened, what did not happen, what is the in between. Chris Jericho has not commented about this. We are, for those that are listening, we are doing this as the press conference is probably just getting underway. And we will update if this is brought up during the press conference. I would imagine Chris Jericho is not going to be at this press conference, but Tony Khan will be. So that's where we stay at this point, Way. And I don't know how much more we can go into it beyond it's a story and it does need to be addressed. If you are Chris Jericho, you need to either like AEW needs to have a very clear idea of what happened, what did not happen. This is involving a performer that you did release. Is there smoke to this fire? And if not, if you are Chris Jericho, you want to make it very clear that this is not true and clear your name. But this is one that I don't think can just be dismissed and forgotten. And hopefully the news cycle sweeps this one up. It was very noticeable tonight, and just that's where I'm at. It needs to be addressed in a meaningful fashion, and with respect to Kylie Ray as well, who is in the middle of this.
Yeah. Not much we could say about like the allegations themselves without knowing more information. There's been a lot of discussion, of course, not just about the story, but about the way it was brought up and into the world through Nick Hausman's podcast, and I suppose the suggestion of the NDA in response to that Jericho tweet on Christmas as well. There's just nothing we know to be able to responsibly, convey to a larger audience besides what you have, so eloquently, I think, talked about. This might not necessarily have been something we would have mentioned on the show if not for this response from Kylie Ray. Seemingly it's a story when the person that is, I guess, being talked about, addresses it, even as something as vague as an emoji. So we're just kind of really like, talking in the dark about everything that's going on, but we do have these facts, and I really hope we get more information hopefully as early as now in the middle of this press conference. I really do feel like Tony needs to at least make some sort of statement. Your kind of your PR really depends on it. And this is not a story I see many people just kind of letting go lightly. There's a lot of pressure I see from people towards the members of the media that are present today to ask and press a question like this. So I have to think they're preparing something. And you know what? Update us, chat room. By the way, I'm told by a couple of people that they've disabled the chat in the media scrum on YouTube today. So
okay, I was not aware of that. So, I mean, if we have any updates, we will convey them. And people that are listening live, I mean, you're going to be on top of it as much as I have. But hopefully I will be getting messages as well throughout this. But this will come out or will come up in a roundabout way during this review, because this did bleed into the show. Like, it was very clear, right, as Jericho came out, that this was an audience that at least a decent percentage of them were aware of this story, and it did affect the match in terms of their involvement in the match. There were signs in the crowd relating to this. So this is not as though this was something that just the corners of the internet were whispering about. I mean, this made its way onto the broadcast, and it was hard not to, like, this was the elephant in the room 8-man tag that we'll be talking about a bit later on. So with that out of the way, we will be getting into the review of World's End from the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. And the last number from WrestleTix had this at just under 9,900 tickets out. So, and that was a few hours out. So it is possible that they did hit 10,000 tickets out for this show. And they were
saying sellout on the commentary.
They kept saying sellout many, many times on the broadcast. And in the hours leading up to the show, we got Keith Lee posting a statement that he has been working with an injury since September of last year, and basically stated, I'm going into this match hurt, but I'm going to work through it. And then boom, just like that, the pre-show starts and he's off the card, not cleared, and he is being replaced by Dustin Rhodes. So the match that has been a year in the making, still to be determined when we will see Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee. I mean, when this match occurs, I mean, it is going to be something else.
Huge. The 2 years in the making, perhaps. At this point, I don't even know if they would continue with Swerve versus Lee. Maybe just as a one-off, but like Swerve has greatly sort of lapped, Keith Lee. Dude, I mean, Keith Lee has had a really unfortunate run with several injuries, including this one. This should have been maybe his most high-profile match in AEW and didn't have it. Will they deem it worthy enough to continue a story after this? I have my doubts, especially where Swerve is headed now.
The pre-show started off with Kris Statlander and Willow Nightingale, a match that was added on Rampage. It's a battle of Nassau and Suffolk County in New York. So we had the battle of New York State here. And so Stokely Hathaway is on commentary. And during a pin attempt, Taz just goes, "When there's a cover, don't speak." And he's pretty much saying, I just am giving you tips live on the air here, as we never speak over when a cover is being made. So this was an interesting match. It started and the crowd is still filing in. They really struggled at the beginning to get any kind of a reaction for this. But things got going and they were doing a lot of big stuff. They were getting to near falls. We saw Willow hit a big pounce, and then there's a scissors kick from Kris. Kris then gets yanked off the top and is power bombed onto the edge of the apron. Saturday Night Fever gets countered. They're trading blows. And then Nightingale goes for an enziguri and like barely connects with Kris here. Kris recovers, misses with the 450, and there's a lariat by Willow. And at this point, like the crowd is really, they have now gotten into things. Once they've got the near falls, like I thought this was pretty impressive for a pre-show that they started with such a low energy crowd and then they built this up. And it was like, okay, now just stick the landing. And so Willow goes for the doctor bomb and it's countered. She tries again, nearly dropping Kris. So then she gets her up for a third time and hoists up Kris, but Kris comes down. And the way she does, it's like she leg drops Willow coming down. Willow, this is clearly the finish. And Willow goes on top and Kris just, I guess, figured like maybe that didn't look great. And she kicks out. And at this point, like the crowd, I think was like on top of this in terms of like this looked very clunky. And with that, Willow gets up, they recover, hits a clean doctor bomb and pins Kris Statlander in 13 minutes and 28 seconds. So I cannot say this was the smoothest match, but I thought it certainly did have its positive attributes for a 13.5-minute match. Unfortunately, the ending was just, it kind of deflated things from it. Just unfortunate because they started very low, built this up, and then it was the finishing sequence kind of took some of that air out.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm really unfortunate about the messy finish, but I think overall you look at this match as a positive for these two. They did not have much time to promote this match. I mean, it was made last night, and I don't even know how many people there in attendance would have been aware of some of the storylines going on here with Statlander and Stokely Hathaway. I felt like they
the battle of two counties.
Yeah. Yes. I feel like they purely got over based on their in-ring work for 95% of this match, and I thought it was good. Two heavy hitters, no breaks at all in terms of pace. So cardio-wise, very impressive. Took a while for this crowd to get engaged, but I thought they got them eventually. So I have to look at this as an overall positive, despite the unfortunate finish.
And Stokely was so dejected, kids. He's recruiting Kris Statlander. He's all upset. He has not been this upset since they canceled Martin.
Were you upset?
I liked Martin. I did watch Martin when I was a kid.
Yeah, so I mean, interesting to think about what they might be where they might be headed with Stokely and Statlander. This is 2 losses in a row for Statlander after not losing for 19 months. And has she done all she?
Yeah, that's right. 2 losses in a row in a week. This is rough.
So I mean, has she done all she can as a baby face? Are they considering a heel turn, or is this just a way to reheat her as a baby face against Stokely, perhaps?
No, maybe she'll go to the dark side with Sky Blue.
Yeah, sure.
Then this very cool vignette aired for Serena Deeb, where she's in a straitjacket, and for all this time she's been training in isolation, dissecting the women's division, and is locked inside of a dojo. And now, did you read this as someone who is like dissecting the women's division and feeling strapped and confined?
I'm only kidding. Yeah. I mean, you could. I took it to almost mean maybe more metaphorically, like you saw her training in a straitjacket position, and I
Yes.
suppose this was maybe her. I mean, the gimmick is one of her new sort of personas is well the end of this promo she says she's like Houdini. It's almost like magic when she's wrestling at her best.
She cannot be caged, and she is shown breaking out of the straitjacket. She has a counter and escape for everything. She is the woman of 1,000 holds, and the professor is ready to return.
I thought this video looked really good. I thought it was scripted well delivered, very cool, very well produced video package. Had me hyped for her return, and I think, almost kind of shocked that anybody returning to AEW is getting a video package. This feels so rare that they have somebody off for a long time, and the most you might get, like we had with Dante Martin. Dante Martin shows up next week. Or like he's back, he's just high fives, his brother in action and Andrade, and that's as most as you get. They put some actual production into this, and they made her feel like she could be a star upon return. So, especially for the women's division, I wasn't expecting something like this.
Next, we go to the 20-man battle royal. The winner will get a TNT title shot, and boy, what an impact that this match would have on the pay-per-view. So, outcomes first, Darius Martin and Action Andretti. No Dante Martin in the match. And I think I got all 20 here. We had Danhausen, John Silver and Alex Reynolds, local guys, obviously, here in Long Island. Lance Archer, Trent Beretta, Rocky Romero, Killswitch, Dalton Castle, who got a pretty big pop, Johnny TV, Butcher, Blade, Serpentico, Menard, Angelo Parker, Christopher Daniels, Kip Sabian, Lee Johnson, and the bounty hunter, Brian Keith. So early on, they bury Archer and Killswitch underneath tables on the floor and destroy them with chair shots. So they are under there for a long portion of the match. And I mean, we're kind of just going along here where someone would get like some big moment and then they'd get eliminated, and the crowd would get sad when John Silver got eliminated, when Dalton Castle got eliminated. Eventually, Archer emerged from the debris, entered the ring, so he went crazy, eliminating Menard, then Daniels, and then he sent Rocky Romero out with a blackout to Christopher Daniels catching him on the floor. And then he stands up with Action Andretti, who chugs his water and then powers up on Archer and with Darius. And then Killswitch enters, and these guys just start eliminating guys in tandem. And we're down to Archer, Killswitch, Trent, and Danhausen. So Trent stops the blackout to Danhausen. They double team, sending Archer out. The two hug, and then Trent turns on Danhausen, throwing him out. And we're down to Trent and Killswitch, and Trent is getting the better of him with these sliding knees. They end up on the edge of the apron, and they keep fighting until Killswitch elbows him and wins the match in 13:49, getting the contract for the TNT title shot.
Crowd was certainly most behind Danhausen towards the end, maybe even throughout like most of this match as a babyface.
Oh man, imagine that played itself out tonight with the TNT title.
Danhausen cashing in on Copeland.
He's under the spell of Cage.
I mean, all I'm saying is I feel like it might have been a more effective end to this match if you had Luchasaurus with Danhausen as the final two, but maybe they wanted a more credible threat in Trent, and they might also be setting up something involving Trent and Danhausen because, Trent was the one who surprise eliminated one of his fellow best friends. So it was a very pre-show battle royal overall. I didn't think there was anything particularly memorable besides those things. And just a way to get to the angle later on tonight.
Hook against Wheeler Yuta, FTW Championship with FTW rules. So what does that mean? Hardcore match.
Trash Canland.
Yeah, we got Yuta coming out, and man, did this guy try so hard to get hated by this Long Island crowd. He calls it a shithole. He makes fun of the Islanders. This isn't even the best island. Staten Island's better. I mean, dude, he tried everything, and this crowd was just like, we're not going to give you what you want here because this is so low-hanging fruit that you have brought to this pre-show heel promo.
Agreed. It was kind of like, I mean, I wouldn't say he exactly bombed, but it was like seeing somebody go up on a open mic night and just really not getting the reaction that they're intending. And I mean, they've given Wheeler several chances on commentary. I think to various degrees of success. Tonight was not one of those. It was a very bare bones generic promo that that is at a level that I don't think impresses really anybody, especially an AEW audience. So he's gonna have to keep working at it.
Why do you call it Long Island? No one wants to stay here too long.
Maybe you should.
You guys suck.
Yeah.
So then the Islanders horn goes off, and out comes Hook in the New York Islanders colors. I mean, this guy here he was representing his home, and Taz mentions that he took his son to many Islanders games here, and now the crowd, they were chanting "Yuta sucks." Hook suplexes him on the ramp, and then we just get a bunch of trash can lid shots. And at one point, Yuta slams him in the desk right in front of Taz, and then Hook fires up with a clothesline. They trade German suplexes, and then there's knees from the tie clinch. But as Yuta throws a knee, he gets caught and T-boned into a trash can in the corner. As he goes for the red rum, Yuta drops him on a trash can, then a DDT on the stop sign for a 2 count. Yuta's eye is cut up, and then Yuta gets a 2x4, but Hook has the equalizer, a hockey stick. And it snaps when he uses it, and he uses the broken part of the hockey stick to assist the red rum, and Yuta taps out in 10 minutes and 17 seconds. Hook is still the FTW champion.
Good match for the hometown crowd. Hook certainly felt like a big deal. They really played up, the Islanders colors, of course. So this was like a significant match for him. I thought it was a good physical hardcore match. I personally found myself a bit disengaged with it, and I didn't sense the crowd being that loud for it compared to a lot of the matches on the show. And I'm trying to think of why. It could be because they kind of started this feud a long time ago and just kind of rushed to, say, hey, the match is tonight. It's also a title that really doesn't mean a whole lot. It's a prop for Taz's friends or son.
I mean, maybe you do have a lot of people that are more pro world than this title would suggest. Like, feel like, it could be worse. You know what I mean? Like, we'll take this world because we don't have an alternative to go.
It should really be. You should consider changing it to Love the World Championship.
LTW title. Okay,
yeah,
it's possible. If you told me on paper all this stuff, okay, heel comes out, buries Long Island. They tap into like the Islanders horn that is going to, hopefully inject some life into this crowd. Hardcore match. We're playing off of Long Island. Like, I would have thought, man, this is just going to generate easy heat on the undercard. And I don't think it really reached that. It almost just felt like this crowd was like, okay, what else do you got? And I've got to say, the pre-show, I don't think it like wowed my world, these 3 matches. I mean, individual parts you could have got into, but the 3 matches, not among the strongest that we are about to talk about.
I don't disagree.
Well, to take a breather after this intense pre-show, we are going to take a very, very quick timeout because on the other side, we are diving into a complete rundown of the pay-per-view portion of World's End.
It is 2024, and tracking technology from advertisers, ISPs, and hackers is getting more sophisticated than many of us can understand. Something you can do to give yourself a bit more peace of mind this year is to protect your browsing by investing in a trusted VPN like NordVPN. Voted Best VPN for Privacy of 2023 by Security.org, Nord is one of the most established and reputable VPN providers in the field. NordVPN is also something I use every day to access geo-blocked online streaming services like AEW+. By far the best way of watching AEW programming commercial-free with on-demand access to AEW's entire TV archive. But perhaps the most value I've gained from using Nord has been the ability to unlock cheaper prices to online content from other parts of the world. Plus, when you sign up at nordvpn.com/postwrestling, you get 4 bonus months on top of all 2-year plans. That works out to $2.88 a month, so it's already paid for itself several times over. Again, $2.88 a month when you sign up at nordvpn.com/postwrestling. Check the link in the show description. Sign up with code postwrestling, get yourself some bonus months, and let NordVPN know you found them through us.
Such a soothing read is One Waiting, and we thank all of the sponsors out there who help bring you this show for free, including the great NordVPN. But now we get into the pay-per-view portion, and we've got the all-star 8-man tag to kick off the pay-per-view. Jay White, Arush, Jay Lethal, and Brody King against Bryan Danielson, Claudio Castagnoli, Mark Briscoe, and Daniel Garcia, with Matt Menard joining Excalibur, Taz, and Nigel on commentary. So this match was a lot of mixing and matching with the different combinations where you either had the existing history with Jay Lethal and Mark Briscoe, or you had fresh ones like Danielson from the Blue League and Jay White from the Gold League. Mm-hmm. And I thought that this just, you've been focusing on these 8 over the last month, and this was sort of just a lot of interesting combinations and a crowd that was pretty into a lot of this stuff. Perhaps the most intense was Brody King and Matt Menard.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
Man, King just got right into his face, called him a bitch, and then like off camera, like struck him after the match as well. So maybe that's the most intense rivalry we have coming out of the All-Star 8-man.
I mean, it's a program you don't exactly think of, as a possibility for Brody King following up from the Continental Classic, but it's a very clear direction. Obviously, he's attached to Daniel Garcia, so it can extend there. But I mean, yeah, maybe let's see what they do.
Yeah, when Daddy Magic was struck, Nigel warned him not to get involved. You can't physically get involved, and there is someone out there that might find you. So he was on his
love his digs
best
up,
behavior here. Danielson and Jay White, I thought for the brief time they had, I thought it was just a great interaction that these two had. They got the heat on Mark Briscoe, and then Claudio is in with Brody King, so we got the meat chance, and then a giant swing to Brody with a seated drop kick from Bryan Danielson. Then a lethal combination to Garcia. He goes for the figure four. Briscoe breaks it up with the froggy bow, and then it is just one guy after the other. Busaiku Nita Roosh, Blade Runner onto Danielson, pop-up uppercut onto Jay White, and then it's Garcia in with the Saito suplex to King. Lethal is in. He tries for the lethal injection. Garcia sidesteps and wins with the rolling jackknife. Crowd goes nuts for Garcia getting the pin at 17 minutes and 16 seconds. And the image that will live on is Daniel Garcia and Mark Briscoe dancing together afterwards. Bryan Danielson did not take part in this, but I thought he was partially intrigued to enjoy this as well. I thought this was a really great opener. I thought it was just a perfect way to open this up. It was fun to have these 8 guys that were all in the classic together. And I would say for the first half of this pay-per-view, I thought this was maybe the best of the early matches on the show.
I have to remember where exactly the midway point is, but I tend to think you're probably right. I thought it was a very good match, maybe a little bit long for my taste, just because I knew I had like 10 other matches coming up.
Yeah, when you get a 17-minute opener and there's 8 more matches to go, I mean, you knew that, your ass is going to be parked for 5 hours for this show.
Pretty much, yeah. I thought it was a great way to just recap some of the storylines in the tournament. You had, significant interactions with Bryan and Daniel Garcia, which seems to be something that they might be continuing with the two of them sharing glances at each other throughout. Jay Lethal,
yeah, they really played up the tension with Danielson and Garcia afterwards, like, and not in an overt fashion, but clearly there's fallout there with those two.
I thought Claudio and Brody were great together as well, doing so many, power spots. And I think a great finish with everybody hitting their finishers one by one, not unlike Backlash 2007's main event.
It was, I'm sure they were going back this week, firing up the WWE network to watch that classic from Atlanta.
Most of.
Following them was Miro and Andrade El Idolo, accompanied by CJ Perry. And it would appear that Andrade's future with AEW certainly seems to be in doubt. And I guess a question, even if we will see him again after this match, like this very well, I mean, we'll get into it, but this pretty much wrote off his association with CJ Perry. He lost. And I think people are just going to be assuming now that was his send-off.
Seems like it, right? Yeah.
Well, we get into the match and hopefully we can break this down. So Miro is out solo, and then Andrade is accompanied by CJ Perry, whose finger is all bandaged up from her infection, and she has made it here. And so Miro jumps Andrade, and so Andrade is wrestling the first couple of minutes with his jacket on, and Miro yells to his wife, "Is this what you wanted?" And Perry yells, "Is this what you wanted? My infected finger?" I was like, what is this story? Can anyone explain this to me?
Dude,
He wouldn't stop talking about his wife for years on this program. Then he says he has rejected his wife and chosen God over his wife. Wife comes to AEW. She's upset because he's chosen God over her. So now she wants to be a manager and can't manage him because he's got God in his corner. So she went out, and whoever she has recruited, Miro has a problem with this because he wants to have his God and he also wants his wife at home.
Mm-hmm.
What is going on here?
Okay, so I mean, up until that point, up until the start of this match, it's not been the best story, but I could accept it. Okay, I can accept the idea of manager wants to come back and basically work and do her like her talent, her skill, which is that of being a great manager. Husband is overly protective, does not want his wife basically working. And he's insanely jealous when she actually ends up managing somebody, ends up wanting to fight him. Relatively simple. I didn't get this line when she pulled out her finger and said, "Is this what you want? Is this what you want? My infected finger?" I mean, what how does that kind of play in? Why would
maybe she's blaming Miro for this.
But she nicked it off of a splinter in the back. Was it a splinter that Miro placed, or was it just the idea of like a workplace accident and Miro all along wanted her to stay at home?
This was his plan, to keep her at home, put a splinter in her finger?
Maybe, yeah. Well, maybe that's what CJ is suggesting.
Well, Miro is just throwing this guy around, and I mean they're working hard, but there's not a lot of heat for this. Mainly because I don't think they quite understand like the dynamics of this either, or they're just not interested.
So it's super awkward because I think Miro's a heel. I think.
What, a chauvinist who wants his wife not to work and stay at home? That's babyface material way.
I really don't know. Andrade,
I think he was the babyface in this match.
But Andrade is definitely the babyface. Like all throughout the Continental Classic, I thought he played a babyface. Now CJ, on the other hand, felt incredibly heelish tonight. So I don't know what I was supposed to think, and I wonder what the crowd largely felt.
Well, Andrade leaps into a kick, and then Miro signals for the game over, applies it, but Perry's yelling not to tap, and he makes it to the rope with his free arm after Miro cannot hold on. Miro tells her, "Cheer for your husband." And then there's another dragon screw to Miro in the ropes, and then Andrade applies the figure eight. Miro reverses, and then Andrade gets the position back into the figure eight when CJ Perry, taking a note out of Bailey, reaches in, takes the arms out, so the figure eight gets dismantled. And Andrade is like, "What's going on here?" And I think the audience was thinking the same thing here, as was Miro. And then there's a thrust kick for a near fall, and then he applies the game over. Miro wins in 15-13. Perry is smiling at Miro, blows him a kiss. Miro doesn't know what the hell's going on. It's not like they embrace and leave together. So we still have this bizarre relationship to explore.
Still something going on. Sure. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the match first. I totally agree with you. It's not like I felt like there was anything wrong with the work, but I actually found it pretty dull until they, maybe got to some of the storyline stuff with CJ. It's maybe a lack of care for the outcome because I had a very strong feeling that Andrade was going to lose this one. There's really not that much to say about it other than the fact that I'm not sad that Andrade and CJ is no longer a thing, because those two had zero chemistry, and I felt it was incredibly forced anytime they were on screen. And I wonder how involved he really was in this storyline, other than just being a body for CJ to, use to make Miro jealous. Like, I wonder if you asked Andrade to explain the storyline, if he'd be able to.
Well, maybe that will come in time.
So what do you think is next for Andrade?
I think he's done with the company, and I think people are going to assume he's going to be WWE bound.
Could we see a reunion with Zelina, maybe against Santos?
There's plenty of roles for him, whether you want to put him into that story, or just elsewhere. There's plenty of options for him that way. Like this was not a smooth fit here in AEW. I think he was marred by multiple things over his time here. Not a very memorable run, and one that we'll see if it's a difference for him in WWE. I mean, he had a good NXT run, not so much a great main roster run, but he's a talented guy, and under Paul Levesque, I'm sure he looks at it as a fresh slate and will get a better opportunity there. But I don't think anyone's looking back at this AEW run and looking at this as like this gigantic loss for the company. It's like they've got so much depth that if someone at this level wants to go, I think this is a decision that you don't really have to be lamenting too hard.
I guess I really wonder, like, when he might have given notice, so to speak, that he wasn't sticking around. Because if you're Tony Khan, would you have put him into the Continental Classic, taking one of those spots? I mean, he was great in the tournament, so for that reason, I think maybe worth it. but it's also like you're kind of, giving him a lot of airtime, as you hand him off to the competition. So I mean, you always wonder when somebody leaves, but I think he'll get treated very well under Paul Levesque.
Next, we go to Timeless, Toni Storm, and Riho for the AEW Women's Championship. And Shivani is on commentary for this one. And man, from the second that Toni makes her elaborate entrance, it was a very pro Toni Storm crowd. And Riho was in a tough spot here as the babyface. And unlike what we had last month at Full Gear, this was not a crowd that was split. Like there were moments when they got into some of the moves for Riho, but this crowd loved Toni Storm. And this is going to be, I think, a continuing issue as long as you are putting Toni Storm opposite baby faces, that she's just the character that everyone is into and crowds are going to eat up in a good way. So early on, Luther blocks Riho, so leaps onto Luther and is caught and handed off to Storm. Storm hits a sky high and then is working on the lower back. They do the spot where Storm is on the shoulders of Luther and throws Riho off the apron, and we get chants of "Let's go Timeless" that are just huge. She applies the Texas Cloverleaf, and then Storm pulls the rope back so Riho can't reach it, so he is ejected. Storm freaks out, and this is when Riho hits a tiger feint kick, a high cross, and then she goes for this slam, and she has trouble slamming her, but it made total sense with her selling the back, and the announcers were on top of that and made logical sense for the match. She continues with the high cross to the floor, dragon suplex, but then Storm misses a hip attack, rolls through, hits the Storm Zero, and Riho kicks out. And for this valiant kick out, we get the crowd chanting, "Toni, Toni." And then Riho had this really nice rolling leg cradle, another 2 count, and out of nowhere, Storm hits this. It's almost like a hip toss into a DDT. I had to rewind this thing 3 times to watch it. It looked really cool. And wins the match in 11 minutes and 45 seconds. And super babyface Toni Storm.
It's always going to be an issue, I think, when you have a babyface that I don't know if they really invested a whole lot into making feel like a big star. I mean, Riho really did just feel like a lame duck challenger, another sort of I don't know, spot of the month type of challenger. I mean, I don't recall hearing one promo from her. Now I know there are limitations, but the countdown, countdown, it wasn't even that great, but at least she had a voice, and they had every opportunity to play some of those videos throughout the course of the month. I personally kind of found the match, it took a while to get going, and maybe a positive I can say is that I definitely saw adjustment in Toni Storm. Remember last month?
This was much better than last month.
So much gimmickry, with the plate and all that. You really didn't see much other than some of the Luther spots, which got over pretty relatively well. But overall, I didn't sense the crowd being too hot for this one.
And then Mariah May ran down with rose petals, and Storm celebrated, and they promoted Mariah's debut for Wednesday on Dynamite. And this is where they mentioned both the passing of Masashi Ozawa, Killer Khan, and Mad Curtis Chapman, who they gave a 10-bell salute to on the Rev Pro card this weekend, and Eddie Kingston brought up after his match with Jon Moxley. Lexi Nair's with Dante Martin, and it leads to him challenging Orange Cassidy for the international title, which will happen this Wednesday. So, to rewind, if you remember, the Prudential Center, the first time they were going to run the Prudential Center, it was going to be the first Blood and Guts until the pandemic started. Okay, that was the debut at the Prudential Center. They're going to the Prudential Center on Wednesday, and this is the one match that they have announced so far for Wednesday.
Oh, so they haven't been back since?
Oh, they've been back several times. I'm just saying, for this building, the first time they went there, that was how big they saw the Prudential Center being. And here for this one, it's
everybody's
Cassidy and Dante.
But everybody's kind of tied up on this card. It doesn't make sense to announce matches before you have results from tonight, right?
Well, it is a very big building, but that's coming up on Wednesday. Swerve Strickland is next, taking on Dustin Rhodes, and this was very interesting because Swerve Strickland was among the biggest baby faces on this show. If you want to go and say he was the biggest baby face on this show, it's he would have next to MJF and Eddie Kingston. Those are the big 3.
MJF and Kingston, definitely. Yeah, and Swerve. Yeah. Yep.
So he comes out. It's a superstar reaction. This entire place is chanting Swerve's house, and Dustin Rhodes is jumped by them before the bell begins, and Prince Nana brings out a cinder block, and they stomp Dustin's ankle on the cinder block. The medical team is tending to Dustin. The crowd is just eating this up. This is like Austin in his like pre-98 heyday where he's the heel, but the crowd just loves watching him destroy people. And the crowd is deafening with its chants. And Dustin wants to return, and he limps back to the ring, and the bell rings. So it's Swerve beating him down. He looks into the camera telling Keith Lee, this could be you, as he works on the ankle. And then, holy Seth Rollins, Dustin Rhodes powers up, regenerates his ankle to hit a Canadian destroyer, a power slam, shattered dreams, and Prince Nana's dealing with the ref. So he then hits the crossroads for a 2 count. And all of a sudden we're getting like
an inverted crossroads, but yeah,
inverted crossroads. And Swerve kicks out of this. So Swerve is like battling back here and hits the rolling flatliner, gets a stretch muffler applied, and then Dustin spits at Swerve, gives him the middle finger. So Swerve puts him down with a pair of house calls, snaps the arm, and hits a Swerve stomp to win in 9 minutes and 28 seconds. And he's signaling for the belt as he goes up the ramp. And yeah, what did you think about the layout of this one?
I was a fan of it. I did not dislike it. I've seen some negative criticism of the match, maybe going so long for something that was not supposed to be on this card. But I feel like this was always going to be a showcase for Swerve, and they clearly had the cinder block spot planned already, and they just substituted Dustin.
Listen, the cinder block isn't returning itself. We got to use this thing. There's a no refund on this thing, and we're not lugging it to Newark.
But I thought Dustin did a really good job. I mean, maybe I'm qualifying it because, I know that they just put this together like, this afternoon. But I thought Dustin sold effectively. And by the end, you saw Swerve as a big star thanks to this crowd reaction, but also just like, this menacing, maniacal man. And I found that interesting too, because he was a babyface all throughout the Continental Classic. But tonight he was felt very much like a heel.
Yeah, I didn't know what to think of it by the end. My first takeaway from this was that I was perfectly fine with just the angle. You did this cool attack. Dustin is somewhat like, he's taken off, but Swerve is like, this crowd was red hot. They were not going to be upset that they didn't get a match out of this. That was not advertised.
Are you sure? Like, this crowd wouldn't have been upset that they wouldn't get a Swerve match? He's one of the top 3 acts on the bill.
Well, okay. If we think that was going to be an issue, they continue the match. And then the way they laid it out, it was like, this is like giving Dustin Rhodes like the heroic comeback that he's going to overcome this injury. And I don't know if part of me was like, does the audience they don't want to get behind Dustin here. But by the end of this whole thing, it's like, there's a certain level with Swerve that it's like, he is, it does work. Like, this crowd is going to take to him no matter how you present him, even if it's destroying like your sympathetic babyface in this manner being
it's badass. It's
Dustin
awesome.
Rhodes. Yeah, and I think they like the fact
how did he get to this point? By threatening to kidnap a baby. So the sicker he is, I get the idea that people will cheer him even more.
So I mean, I thought Swerve was like a major positive on this show, and they did have to pivot away from Keith Lee. But that is going to be sort of your balancing act here, is that it would seem that like they're going to be feeding him baby faces, and it puts the baby. It's kind of similar like a Riho, where it's like the guy that they're going to be into in all these matches is Swerve, who's like the cool baby face that they want to give this like danger and edge to, and sort of like a heel foundation.
Well, John Moxley plays that role wonderfully, right? The guy who's kind of sick and can play a heel like tonight, but still be loved by this entire audience. And I think Swerve is certainly at that level as a performer. Like the layout of the match made a lot of sense to me when I considered that MJF was going to retain the championship by the end of this show. And obviously, he like all the injury stuff, the contract stuff, I have really no idea what's going on. But clearly, they were setting up Swerve versus MJF for the AEW World Championship. And I think in that scenario, a heel Swerve versus a babyface MJF made the most sense. Now, I'm not exactly sure, what his next program is.
Yeah, there would be a big question mark next to that program that people were anticipating, and
it could still happen.
Maybe it could later. Still happen. Yeah. Guys, Keith Lee, we'll get there eventually. Okay, on our time.
They're peaking for Wembley.
Yeah, 2027. Ricky Starks, Big Bill, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Konosuke Takeshita against Jericho, Guevara, Sting, and Darby Allin. So I mean, dude, they gave Jericho an individual entrance to come out at the beginning here. And so he comes out to Judas, and there's certainly like a predominant amount of the crowd that is singing. But boy, was it pronounced when the music ended. And it was like, I'm not going to say it was like the majority of the crowd, but there were enough boos that you could hear mixed with other people finishing the lyrics of the song. And you could tell right from there that there were people that were not happy and were very aware of the news involving Chris Jericho today.
I mean, this was probably the most interesting entrance and match I was looking towards at the start of the show, predominantly for the reactions to Chris Jericho, because I think there were still a lot of questions. I mean, how many people would have been aware of the story that just broke on the internet hours before this? And I know it's kind of silly to suggest that like the AEW audience isn't on the internet, but there are people that I'm sure are busy today and had lives and weren't scrolling through Twitter catching up on this before going to the arena tonight. Nonetheless, I feel like we got our answer. There were enough people that were more than aware of what was going on and responded accordingly.
And it was very clear way from the layout of this match. They did not pivot from anything. Like this was the match that they were putting out, and really it was to the detriment of the match, because like this audience did not want to react to Chris Jericho in a positive light, and the spots were designed for big babyface moments, mainly involving him and Sting doing stuff together.
So the big moments that I think were maybe the most memorably kind of tough to watch were when he paused at the end of Judas, but then when he also did the Les Sex Gods pose with Sammy Guevara. Just any sort of pause for like a babyface reaction that you're giving the crowd was a moment for the crowd to boo him. There were two notable signs, pretty much hard camera center. One of them said, Jericho go away. Another said, Worlds NDA, which I'm not entirely sure what it's like supposed to be a pun of. Like, what's his moniker? Worlds what?
Who's this we're talking
so
about?
What,
Sorry,
like,
I'm
what is
Worlds?
What is Worlds NDA supposed to like make like be a sort of a pun of?
I think it was just to have the NDA letters in there.
Right. How about walls of NDA? I don't know. I'm sorry.
There was what was the sign? Jericho go away.
Yeah, I mentioned that.
There were multiple signs and chants throughout. I mean, there were NDA chants during the match. I mean, they were very easy to hear.
Yeah.
So Jericho's booed when he's tagged in early. And
World's End. Thank you. World's NDA. Oh, okay. It's
yeah.
Got it. So. I'm sorry. I'm very slow. I'm sick.
Darby's in. He hits a code red to Takeshita, and then dude, Takeshita hit this insane blue thunder bomb off the turnbuckle onto Darby, and then Big Bill and Hobbs just start swinging Darby, and they throw him halfway across the ring. So the crowd, it was like Sting was like the protective cover in this match, because the crowd, they were just starting to chant, "We want Sting." Darby finally makes the chant, and then he's hitting stinger splashes to Starks and Takeshita when Jericho comes in and they do stereo splashes. This is when the NDA chants begin. And then I don't know, I was messaging with a friend who had like was watching this and wasn't sure if like Sting had gone down, and Aubrey was checking on him, and I went to rewind and I couldn't see anything. But then moments later, he's working with Starks, and he goes for like the hot shot to like drop Starks' throat on the top rope, and comes up short and just drops Ricky like before the rope. And then so the match continues from that. That was kind of an awkward moment of the match. There's a flying cutter from Guevara. Bill makes the save, and then we get a scorpion death drop by Darby. Takeshita drops Darby on his head. And then it's the death lock is applied when Don Callis enters, and Sting lets go, and we get the walls onto Powerhouse Hobbs, and the crowd is booing the walls of Jericho. Sting drops Takeshita, applies the Scorpion Deathlock, so Starks is in to stop them, and it's Bill booting out Sting. Darby takes out Bill with a tope suicida, and then Guevara goes for a dive, but he's caught with a spear, very well timed by Starks, and Guevara ends with a GTH and a shooting star press, pinning Ricky Starks in 15 minutes and 42 seconds. But the overriding factor of this match was it was the elephant in the room. And I thought it took so much of the life out of this match. They did the post-match celebration with Sting and presenting this as final match in New York. And And he even went over to see Vladimir, the super
Mhm.
fan, in the front row as well. So that was cool. But I thought this match, it was just really impossible for most of this crowd to get into, and it just felt it was obvious, like they had their match planned out and they were not going to let the news affect it. And
Mhm.
yeah, and it dragged this match down significantly. Like I can't really even assess this as a match. Like what they had in mind, the audience was not, or at least a percentage of them, they were not in the desire to see.
It was a very weird match to watch. Um, Technical work was totally fine, like, maybe except for some weird moments with Jericho and Bill. I thought Sting looked good here with his limited work overall, and I love seeing Darby back here. I think he's sorely, like, needed currently, or I've certainly missed him. But the cloud of everything made the wrestling a bit tough to solely focus on. I I really do question maybe the idea of, like, you
Should he have been in the match? Like, it's one thing in hindsight, but do you think like they should have been thinking that way today during the day of?
I wonder if I have to think they might have considered it, but at that point, like, I think maybe you're trying to think, if you're AEW, how we can make this the less big, the smallest story it could possibly be, and maybe proceeding with everything as planned, and essentially no selling everything that took place in the afternoon today was their feeling that was the best way. But the crowd, I felt, was significant enough. Now I'd love to hear, like, from people that might have not known everything that's going on, whether or not they were able to perceive from this crowd something was off. But even if not, like, it's become, I mean, it was a story before that, and I felt like the match tonight just amplified it. Um, so yeah.
So I'm getting as we speak. I don't know who asked the question, but Tony Khan was asked, "What has been done to prevent sexual harassment in the past and going forward?" And Khan's response was, "We have a policy in place. We make sure we do everything we can. We have the best safety record." So I'm just getting these notes in real time. So anything that comes around, we will see if there's any specifics in
And
regards
he's
to this. And he is wearing a wig and glasses that was put upon him as he is answering this very serious question.
a very fuzzy hat, courtesy of Tony Storm.
Oh, it's
So
a hat. I'm
I
sorry.
believe so. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Hmm. All right.
Um, he says if anything came to light to him, he would take it to the disciplinary committee. Everyone has an open line to him or anyone in the committee. I mean, we're talking about a situation that was potentially, allegedly, years ago,
Yeah.
before the formation of any known disciplinary committee. So this is fine but I mean, it sounds like this was not specifically asking about the Jericho story.
Hmm.
And so he's just giving kind of boilerplate assessment of how they handle these
Mhm.
situations.
Yeah. Well, the press conference isn't over yet. But if that was as much as we got, I guess I wouldn't be that surprised.
It's one question, so we will see if more is brought up.
Mhm.
Julia Hart against Abadon followed that for the TBS championship, and another match that struggled with heat here. So Hart is working on the back. Abadon, what were the house rules here? She's allowed to bite, or
Yeah, she's allowed to bite. Yeah.
would that be your choice?
Well, if I was a skilled biter, you know,
Didn't really pan out too well for her.
well, she should have employed a better biting strategy. Maybe work on that biting. Um, I mean, she didn't expect Sky Blue, I suppose.
My rule would be no basing on your feet for a moonsault.
Well,
I'm done.
okay, yeah. Well, then you would have won today, based off of DQ.
She goes for the Heartless, and Abadon gets to the rope, pulls her back, and then turns it into a cover. There's a spinning side slam by Abadon, and then Sky Blue appears, knocking Abadon off the apron as Aubrey's dealing with Julia Hart. Abadon drags Sky Blue from underneath the ring, attacks her, but this allows Hart to jump Abadon from behind, rolls her into the ring, and then hits her moonsault. Now, the moonsault has been criticized, where, especially from the angle they were shooting it, like she lands on her feet, and it wasn't the smoothest moonsault. That said, Excalibur was so quick here explaining, well, it wasn't a traditional moonsault press. It looks like she came down and landed with her knees on the body and onto her feet. Like, he tried his best to cover for something that was tough to cover for. And Julia Hart retains the title in 11:57, even with the disadvantage of her opponent being able to bite her.
She was prepared. She was prepared for the biting. Yeah. Um, I thought it was I thought the crowd was kind of flat for this one too, and I wasn't really
They were.
captivated for much of it, to be honest. I didn't even think the biting stip was utilized all that much to make it maybe a bit more memorable. I was very happy to see Abadon get a chance here. They're a very underutilized talent that the crowd seems to love. Great potential as a baby face. I hope they are able to carry on with them, and I think they'd be a great opponent for Toni Storm. Like, can you imagine the skits? The like the horror meets classic cinema feud.
Sorry, I'm communicating as
Okay.
as we speak.
Oh, that's okay.
Sorry, sorry about this.
I
I'm
mean,
doing multiple things at once here.
This is a lull in the show for sure, where like
it was. I would argue, like up until this point, I would say like this was like a lower end AEW pay-per-view. Like it's really going to be these final 3 matches that I think are going to be people's focus of the show. If you're coming away with a strong positive reaction. So we go to the no DQ match between Christian Cage and Adam Copeland for the TNT Championship. No DQ match. I thought this was very clever in the fact that they did a TLC match without advertising a TLC match, to where your expectations would have been insane, probably going into this. And they went out and they
went more than TLC.
Yes, they went TLCF.
Yes.
So I mean, they come out, first of all, like if you want to say like this crowd, like they were not in, like the heat was lacking for a number of previous matches. The second they came out, they were red hot for this, and it kept up for 22 minutes in this match. So Copeland just goes after Christian, knocks Nick Wayne into a wall. They fight into the crowd. Copeland comes off a balcony with a high cross, and then they make their way back to the ring, and it's all Copeland until his shoulder goes into the post, and Cage takes over, stomping the neck. And somewhere in all this, Copeland gets busted over his left eye, and dude, this is going to look awful tomorrow. That's an Instagram day after shot. So Cage is using the good old trusty kendo stick, not a candy cane kendo stick, but just the regular variety, and then puts a chair on top of Copeland while applying a Boston Crab. Copeland fights back. He fires off with his own kendo stick shots and applies the crossface, including getting a piece of the chair to put in the mouth. And then Copeland pulls out the ladder, and the crowd's chanting TLC. Cage cuts him off, and then there's a sunset bomb by Cage off the ladder into the ring. And you're thinking at this point, what more could you ask for from two men whose combined age is 100 in this match? After they gave you chairs, they gave you tables, and they gave you ladders, and the crowd starts chanting, "We want fire." And then we get a concerto attempt but Nick Wayne runs in, grabbing the chair away from Copeland. So this allows Cage to get up, low shots Copeland with a chair, and then Copeland whips the chairs into the face of Cage and spears him through a table. And this crowd is going nuts at this point. It was like, you could just finish this, and this is perfect. Shayna Wayne yanks Paul Turner out from counting. So Nick nails Copeland from behind with a belt shot. And then, as much as we could focus on the fire or the ladders or any of the weapons, maybe the scariest moment for me was watching Nick Wayne hit this Wayne's World to Adam Copeland, who had to be the most trusting guy possible with Nick Wayne to take this. Because, dude, the Wayne's World, like, it's a tough angle that you're coming at here when we're talking about from the turnbuckle to the floor on a guy whose neck is uncompromisable. And he took this thing and, got up and continued the match. But Nick Wayne was heavily involved here. He's brought into the ring, and Cage hits the kill switch, but Copeland kicks out. So then Cage and Nick Wayne bring out lighter fluid from under the steps. They put it all over the table, and Cage comes over to Copeland. "Go fuck yourself." And he goes to put Copeland through the table, but Copeland avoids going through, and he takes Nick Wayne and attempts to powerbomb him through the table, but Nick Wayne just like slides off this thing, and Copeland goes back into the ring, stops a belt shot, and he uses Christian's own kill switch to pin Christian in 24 minutes and 47 seconds. And I thought this match was incredible. I would go so far as to say, of Copeland's post-return 2020 onwards, I think this was his best match. Like what would be the runner up. Like
the greatest match of all time, John.
That was an excellent match. Like that's the
Yes.
one that comes to mind for me. That was a really great match. Different circumstances,
but it was a pandemic crowd, or like
even with the crowd differences, I thought this was just a phenomenal match that these two had. And this turned the show around
completely from the get-go. I mean, for one thing, this was like a well-built story with two legitimate stars, and incredible crowd noise from the beginning. And it's amazing because, like, how old are they? Like 49?
They're 50 each.
Oh God. I would make the argument that as professional wrestlers, they might be in their prime. Now, I'm not saying physically, okay? I don't think they can accomplish what they used to during the TLC era, but wrestling
they did a lot in this one. Like, not the crazy stunts of old, but I mean,
they did a lot.
This was just as compelling of a match in terms of like the smart use of the weapons and trying to get the most out of what they were going to use.
Where those matches really kind of made their name off of being like some of the most spectacular stunt shows we've seen. Wrestling allows veterans to employ their creativity, their psychology, and their acting ability, which are things that might, for a lot of people, including these two, get better with age. So through those, I think, developments and advancements in both of their careers, they're telling some of the best stories of their careers right now. And tonight, like, clearly still enough physically to deliver a match of this quality. So I would very much at least try to suggest the argument that these two are doing something, at least tonight, was an example of them doing some of the best work of their entire careers. So this was amazing. Worth noting as well that Edge was wearing his WrestleMania 22 gear.
That's right.
Which also contained, of course, a very famous flaming table spot with Mick Foley.
Yeah. And I wonder if that encouraged the fire chance, if enough people maybe put 2 and 2 together there. Because you think of that WrestleMania 22, like that's the image you think of, but maybe I'm giving that too much credit here. But this was like a really great match. And as I did joke about 2 years ago when GCW was running the Hammerstein Ballroom, poor Nick Wayne could not even wrestle in the state of New York. And now they're doing Fire in the state of New York.
That is weird. What changed?
I don't know. I would ask the state of New York, but it might be a process to try and find that answer out. But
I suppose if you're running Nassau with 10,000 people, there are different allowances.
I don't know. That might in fact be the case. So then Killswitch is out to attack Adam Copeland, and he choke slams Copeland onto the chair, which is open. And Killswitch wants to use his contract, which we are suddenly learning has a Money in the Bank property to it. And Cage demands he give him the contract, and Killswitch is torn. And then Cage whispers something in his ear, and Killswitch reluctantly hands over the contract, which Cage signs, has the referee ring the bell. He spears Adam Copeland and wins back his title in 13 seconds. And I saw a lot of back and forth in terms of this was a divisive decision among people. I mean, number one, it is, very much, I would say, property of a WWE trope doing this kind of a cash in, for lack of a better comparison. But on the other side, this is Copeland that is still chasing Christian. And number two, it's I think you look at it as, the idea of, extending this program and how we can do that. Like this was Copeland, like he leaves with the title. It's sort of like that's your mountaintop moment. And instead we've given him something to continue after here. So I did not have like a too negative of a feeling over this. And it's also kind of like, here is the guy that kind of one of his big traits was he was the guy that the opportunist. And here it was, the tables are turned on him. So I didn't have as negative a takeaway. And I'm not going to be too sour after seeing a match like this that I just thought was out of this world great.
I like the finish. Like, yeah. I'll straight up, I felt
and you're consistent. You loved when Moose did this to Josh Alexander in front of his baby.
I'm somebody who at the time
you love baby faces just failing in spectacular fashion after a big triumph.
I'm somebody who at the time when I first saw it, kind of got interested in wrestling again because of the finger poke of doom. So I don't know how many people are turning off their podcast
This
right
was
now.
not the finger poke of doom.
No, I mean, I thought exactly the same thing as you. Like, why kill this program right now when you still have so much to get through? You're trying to create a hero's journey for Edge, and you have a temporary sort of like, moment of celebration, giving him a lot of credibility as somebody who is more than capable of beating Christian, but you screw it out of him. And in that process, you're building this, to me, you're making this program that much harder. You're continuing the sort of, parental abuse of kill switch here from Christian Cage, and I just think this program is too hot to extinguish within 2 matches. So I just think that they're going to carry this into the new year, maybe for an even bigger stipulation. And what could that be? How do you top Flaming Tables?
I've got the answer. A Clockwork Orangeville House of Fun match.
What would that entail?
Going to Orangeville, number 1, and I don't know. You go from there.
All right,
We'll see.
that's all.
Yeah, I think you. I mean, they kind of gave you the TLC match here, so I really don't want to see them have to. Like I'm of 2 thoughts, because I was the one who said, like, I don't want to necessarily see these guys have to kind of just play the greatest hits and go to this, but then. This was fantastic.
This wasn't that. This wasn't. I mean, yes, it was TLC because you saw the weapons.
I thought it was really smart not to promote this as, like, it would have been really easy to just come up with a new name and promise tables, ladders, and chairs with these 2. But I think that would have, number 1, you would have gotten the criticism that we're just retreading with these 2. They're not doing anything new or fresh, whether that's fair or unfair. And number 2, I think the expectation would have been so high because your reference point is all of those stunts and matches. Instead, it was like a no DQ match, where you're expecting a fight, you're expecting a high quality, but you introduce these things organically in the match, and it was a reward for you buying this pay-per-view, and you got more than you expected.
Totally agree. Why play? Number 1, I don't even know if they're allowed to use those letters in 6. Maybe it'll be a CLT.
No, they can't use TLC. They wouldn't be able to.
Well, you could use LCT, TCL, which actually I don't think you can. I think that's a TV company. Anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing more storytelling from these 2. I thought it's been great so far.
And Copeland's left in the ring, staggers to his feet, and the crowd they cheer him on his way out. Now it is time for the Continental Classic final with the star Bryan Danielson on commentary. I mean, making a last-ditch effort to get commentator of the year in my books here. He was amazing on commentary for this match,
as always.
Bryan Stan level. That's the highest compliment I can give here for an analyst. So Bryan is just stating he was too overconfident on Wednesday. He didn't focus on being the better technical wrestler and just came to blows with Eddie Kingston. And there was a moment in this match, he's just watching this and he just scoffs. He's like, I can't believe I lost to this guy. He was great in this. So Eddie's out. He's got the yellow and black Kawada style kick pads on. And early on, we're getting some guard play action from these 2. Then Bryan is breaking down his feints and how great his striking is. Moxley can't get into that game. I was like, this is like a super level of like technical like start that we're getting here. We're breaking down like feint techniques. And then Eddie Kingston goes for this suicide dive, and I thought this guy killed himself as he landed coming down, and this led to his neck being attacked by Moxley, and boy, did Kingston sell this. They have Moxley delivering Germans on the neck, and then they get into a big chop battle, and at one point, Moxley tweaks his knee, and he staggers and gets caught by the Hurricane, and Bryan Danielson just yells, "Don't let this bum beat you, Mox!" And he gets chopped by Kingston, and Kingston's yelling, "You want 100%, motherfucker?" And he keeps chopping him, and he takes him to each corner to deliver the chops, and then a Northern Lights bomb, but Moxley kicks out. Kingston applies Moxley's own bulldog choke, which beat him in of course, in their matches back in 2020. This was the focus of Moxley's victory. And it's followed by hammer and anvil elbows, which Danielson says these are not his specialty. And he reapplies the bulldog choke, but man, Moxley's moving his hips. He knows how to defend this. They drill this. And Moxley gets his own choke. Kingston lunges for the rope, hits another Hurricane for a 2 count, and then a Northern Lights bomb. Moxley kicks out again, and they're on all fours, and they trade headbutts, but safe headbutts, then slaps, and then as they're just hitting all of these strikes out of nowhere, Moxley gets hit with the home run shot. The Hurricane lands, and it just boom, hits him on the button, and he goes down, and Kingston gets the win in 17 minutes and 16 seconds. I love this closing sequence, like where it was just the one big shot at the end that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And this celebration after, I mean, you want to talk about establishing a title as meaning so much. He was just like in tears here as he was presented with this championship, the Continental Crown. And again, he shouts out Mad Kurt into the camera. And this was awesome. And it wasn't just a fantastic match. It was a phenomenal presentation from the commentary, the seriousness, the techniques, the strengths, the weaknesses of both. I hope this is almost like a bit of a type of style we see when a big Continental Crown match takes place. Like it is sort of more focused on this. I watched this. I like, this is everything they need to be aiming for. I just thought this was phenomenal. Like I might still lean Danielson and Kingston this week as my favorite match of the tournament, but in terms of like the everything involved, like I don't think you could have done better than this. I just thought they did a tremendous job.
You can't ask for much more than this for the final of a tournament. I thought they more than stuck this landing. I mean, it was already a match that I think was heavily anticipated, but they delivered that and then some. When this entire tournament began and when they announced this new Triple Crown, I like many were very skeptical. But now that we've seen the end, I mean, not only was it helped by I think a serious presentation that at the time, like when they announced it, felt almost like a direct sort of answer for the criticisms of the Devil storyline and just a lot of like, more sports entertainment like angles. And it's arguably saved the last month or so of AEW's sort of like, reception. So thankfully they have this as a guiding light for next year, because I would have been very scared if there was not a Continental Classic this year, and we'd be expecting more of what we haven't enjoyed. But it's also the fact that you have not just a tournament, but a tournament directly attached to one of the most beloved wrestlers in the entire world, in Eddie Kingston, and the idea and the meaning behind Triple Crown meaning so much more to him because he grew up idolizing the people who have won this championship, and to at least give what feels like a bit of a sort of North American version of that. It means that much more to him. And I thought they nailed it with the final, having Eddie be the one to face one of his best friends and longtime rivals, finally beating Mox. All in all, I think great storytelling on top of great wrestling as well.
I don't think there was anyone that was going to be able to sell this accomplishment better than Eddie Kingston, who does not even need a microphone to convey those emotions. And this was a tremendous post-match as well. So great.
So he's going to be busy. He's going to work to continue to work New Japan, maybe the occasional ROH show, and whatever continent, every continent.
I mean, this guy should be one of your top baby faces on AEW. Like that should be his role. But and then the two hugged afterwards as well. That was a cool moment, and one of their best pay-per-view moments, and one that did not involve a countdown timer.
Countdown timer.
The exploding barbed wire death match, as you may have forgotten about.
Man, I mean, I was just
a couple years removed from that one.
I think of Omega and Jericho, Moxley. Sorry, Omega Moxley mainly, but you're right. Yeah.
So Orange Cassidy, Dante is on Dynamite, and then the FTR House of Black match that has been built up for weeks will be on Collision next Saturday, a tag match. And that takes us to MJF and Samoa Joe for the AEW Championship, and they had this big Long Island-centric video for MJF with all of these people. I mean, they just made this guy like, let's just nominate this guy as like the next mayor-elect of Plainsview. So he comes out, and plenty of Create a Pro performers and students in this video as well. And MJF comes out to a hero's response, and he points to the entrance, and here to surprise us, Adam Cole coming out on crutches. So MJF avoids a muscle buster early on, and he's selling this shoulder, and that's the whole focus of this match for Samoa Joe. Multiple times, MJF calls for this kangaroo kick, and there was no way Joe was taking this kangaroo kick. He stopped him at every chance, slingshot him over the top, and MJF, with his one shoulder, felt he had the recuperative ability of Dustin Rhodes, went to skin the cat here, and Joe just nailed him upside down, booted him to the floor. And then he hits MJF with a muscle buster on the edge of the apron, with Cole looking horrified at this. MJF fights back with one arm. He thumbs Joe in the eye, tries to lift him, but he collapses, and then manages a heat seeker, tries for another. Joe lifts him, and it's turned into a sunset flip roll up. He goes for the salt of the earth, but can't fully apply it. So Joe reverses to apply the Fujiwara armbar. MJF gets out, and they run into Bryce Remsburg in the corner. And dude, it was like a collective from this crowd. Like, they knew we're not getting the Continental Classic final booking wise here. But Bryce goes
come on,
down.
everybody knew the devil shit was going to happen in this match,
Yes.
right?
So MJF is smiling at this because he then hits a low blow and lifts up Joe, marches to the center of the ring, and he hits this dude with the F5. And there he is down on the center. Cole is rallying MJF. He gets on top. Bryce recovers, and Joe kicks out. And as MJF gets the ring, Cole is stumbling in his jacket looking for this dynamite ring, hands it off to MJF, but he's caught in the coquina clutch. MJF does the Bret Hart kick off the turnbuckle, lands on top, but Joe transitions back to the coquina, and MJF is going out. One arm goes down, second arm goes down, and then they pull the arm up for the third time, and the arm goes down. This is like the babyface lost to the three arms going down. I mean, a monumental moment here in wrestling history. And Joe wins the title in 17 minutes and 53 seconds in about as clean a way as you could. And I don't want to say that I have telegraphed this all year, but we all know that MJF's mom was there in attendance in his hometown, and he lost. It's been a thread all year long way. This has been a curse. And Samoa Joe is your new world champion. Before we get to the post match, your thoughts on this match? I do not think this reached the Grand Slam level, which I thought was a hell of a match they had back at Arthur Ashe Stadium.
Maybe you could be right. I feel like they're different enough that I don't know if it's that direct of a comparison. For one thing, I mean, for all we know, MJF is really injured, and they played that shoulder up, I thought, very well throughout the entire match. I thought the heat was insane throughout this entire thing. I also felt it was oddly like sweet to see MJF perched up in the corner as the match was about to begin and like cracking a genuine smile. You know, it almost looked like he was breaking character and just kind of absorbing the moment for once. And obviously,
well, look at this. It's like it's not just like here your champion coming to your hometown. It's like, dude, it's a sold out venue. Like you should be really proud of that fact. I mean, I would have like here's a guy who is now can claim, you know, I headlined Wembley with 80,000 paid, and I'm sure this means almost as much the fact that you're in Long Island and you didn't do like a bad number, like coming in. Like it'd be disappointing if he came in here in his hometown and it was like, 6,000-7,000, but they moved a lot of tickets recently.
I also wonder if really considerable negative criticism coming off of several of his segments over the past several months, as he addressed, in the Players Tribune article, might have weighed in on him.
Really great piece. If you haven't read it.
Yeah, might have weighed on him too, where he wasn't exactly sure what the response was going to be. And when he was met with that hometown welcome, I mean, it was actually very touching. And I thought they proceeded to have a really good storytelling match. The finish, though, I love, dude. Okay, like I feel like we've seen. So to me, like this MJF run has all been about, like, at least for the early portion, about sort of identifying tropes in professional wrestling and just either fully diving in or maybe completely breaking them and playing with audience expectations. And I felt it was very fitting for the entire run to end based off of one of the most cliched spots in professional wrestling, and having our expectations be completely subverted and having a championship reign end by that sort of like, three arm lift. I thought it was a great end to the match.
So Adam Cole gets into the ring. The whole crowd is chanting bullshit. And the Devil's masked men surround the ring and they go to attack Max. They pull aside Adam Cole. They're holding him down. And Cole is saying, hit me. And Max is saying, don't you hit him. You hit me. And the lights go out for a long time. And then they come on. And Adam Cole is seated in the chair, flanked by the masked men, who reveal themselves as Roderick Strong, Wardlow, Matt Taven, and Mike Bennett, who are the masked men, the unmasked men of the Devil. Adam Cole and Max is heartbroken as he sees Adam Cole, and they jump him, they attack him. Wardlow power bombs Max, and the announcers are in shock as the show goes off the air with the devil revealed.
So we got the reveal. Yeah, we were wondering if the storyline was going to come to an end, at least the mystery portion, and they did. So I guess the question is
not like they made a big push for it either. Like if
Yeah.
you could have argued like they could have made a bigger deal out of this. Like I don't think you had people buying this show expecting the payoff. Like it's nice
Perhaps.
when you reward your audience as well, but I think this was more than the time to get the mystery. Like it had reached, I think for some, they were never on board with it. And at least now we're going to the next chapter where hopefully we can get away from some of the more cartoonish aspects of it to a more proper feud. And as well, I mean, there's going to be lots of like storyline here with MJF, and you're probably going to see quite the blurring of the lines here of what is going on, what is not, his injuries. And I would say at the very least, he probably should disappear for some time until we see his response. Like I would not expect him to be back on Wednesday, for instance. Like he should disappear and lead to people's speculation on what is going on with him and go from there.
Right. Yeah. I think it's the perfect out, like he's not necessarily, I mean, for one thing, he is out possibly due to injury, but he's also out due to heartbreak, which I think is an even more,
that could be
serious
6 to 8 months potentially. Yeah.
That's it, man.
That's like an ACL.
So I'm curious to know if maybe this was always the plan to reveal at the end of Worlds End in Long Island, or were they going to delay this until Adam Cole could actually return? And what is the status? What is the health status of an Adam Cole? Are we going to see him week to week? Was this just, hey, a big appearance on a big show, and then Adam Cole continues to maybe go away for a while? Still a lot of questions, maybe. What do you feel about the selection of the Masked Men and what is essentially now a stable with the Kingdom and Wardlow?
I thought that Adam Cole was the safest pick, and one that I didn't like. There's enough that they have built up that we had stated, like when, like had they done Adam Cole and MJF like way back when this started, and the turn comes 3 or 4 weeks in, it's like, okay, here's another wrestling turn. But instead, it's like you have seen these two, like you've seen this like bond that when the turn comes, it's going to mean something because the audience, I think, is invested in this. So I thought he was the safe pick to go with. I don't think any of the WWE releases would have been met positively, like none of them. Like the options were very low. You could have gone for some crazy name to just get some shock value, but I thought that it was a very, very small list of people that would not be met negatively, and Cole was probably your safest, that has a storyline reason that you can tie it in together, like right down to like his plan was to replace Max at the last pay-per-view and cost him his title. And it was thwarted by Max coming to save his friend. There's a lot that they can explain that can totally make sense with all of this. And you can put enough obstacles in Max's way before he can get to Adam Cole once he is healthy. Like it's not the end of the world that he can't, even though the pay-per-view is named as such, that he can't wrestle next month or at Revolution.
I think it's a blessing, honestly. Like I could see this at this point maybe being the peak towards All In, and I think given the potential time off of Max and the series of matches you might be able to have with the rest of this faction, I think it stands a decent chance of being able to delay the match itself until August. All that said, we've been talking, I think, for weeks about who this person is, and by the time it's revealed, will we be disappointed? And I can't say I'm disappointed. Like, Adam Cole is probably like such an obvious pick that maybe for that reason I was dismissing it. Like there's no way it could just be, as simple as that. They went with a simple option, and from a storytelling standpoint, I'm satisfied. Like you got logic, okay, attached to it. Everything to my knowledge makes sense if you run it back and just replay everything without the idea that Adam Cole has been the devil. I think it makes sense. So I'm okay with it.
What if Adam Cole explains, yeah, you were such a great friend, Max. Remember those sneakers you gave me right before Grand Slam that I wore for the first time coming out to the ring, and I jumped off that apron? All your fault.
I mean, it could be as simple as, hey, you beat me at Wembley. You robbed me of the biggest moment in my career. You took my spot.
I think like there is a lot. And I think for the people that like, I think there were the strongest percentage of people, I think, were in the middle of this one, where this was dragging on. They weren't quite enamored with it. They had their issues with it, but it was a salvageable angle that hopefully now they can bring them in. I think it was a smaller that were absolutely hating it or absolutely loving it. Like, a lot of it was more so.
A lot of it were moments that we absolutely loved or absolutely hated.
Yeah, and I think the makeup of the masked men, it was super goofy, and I think we can eliminate that, save for probably some merchandising of devil related merch. The solo media portion with Tony Khan is beginning now, so we will keep people posted. But that was World's End, that I think was totally off the back of the last 3 matches that I would say would be the key stuff. I have a really hard time picking between my match of the night was between the TNT match and the Continental Classic final. I thought those are my 2 that it's really hard for me to pick one over the other, maybe lean Continental Classic, but I thought those 2 were just, they made the pay-per-view for me, those 2. And I enjoyed the main event. You got the big reveal at the end. So like, that was probably a bonus for people that bought this and maybe didn't know if they were getting that either. So yeah, that was it. But I would say, like, prior to that TNT match, like, outside of the All-Star 8-man, like, there was a lot of disappointing stuff on this show that did not live up to, like, if you want to kind of, grade this as a whole, like, this was not like your start to stop excellent pay-per-view with maybe one down match. Like, there were several down matches on this show.
Agreed. I think history will look back fondly on this show because of the strength of the last 3 matches, because they were very, very strong. And you had a significant reveal, the culmination of a big storyline to close the show. But in recapping the show, I certainly can't forget about maybe the real lull that we saw throughout a string of matches in the middle.
Yeah.
And I think it maybe points to maybe an uneven spread of airtime. There are certain storylines that are Collision exclusive, like an Abadon versus Julia Hart, or I don't know, a Riho that really only got matches, sure, but not much beyond that in terms of story. So it calls it into question, like, what they can do to maybe even out some of it. But I'm going thumbs up overall, just off of the strength of the last 3 matches.
It's and like, we're talking like almost 2 hours between those 3 matches. So it's a sizable portion of the show that I would have a really hard time giving this. But maybe in this new wave of things, like, if we talk about a blowaway great AEW show is like a thumb, we need more different variations of fingers, and
it's more like thumbs at, like, I think maybe 10 o'clock, like close to a 10.
Whoa, what's going on? There's a bubble.
My Apple OS.
Is that 2 thumbs up between you and Apple? Okay.
Yeah. See, it even does that.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
I don't have anywhere near the technology that you do. Okay. We're gonna go on to phone calls now. We're gonna ask the people, like, keep things relatively brief.
Yes.
My throat is, like, falling apart as we speak here, and it is late on the East Coast. But let us open up the phone lines.
But if you're gonna send a super chat, you can go as long as you want, because Jake Hollinar sends one of $5. Thank you, Jake, for the support. He says, I felt like I was watching Masawa versus Kobashi from 2003 in Noah again. That's how incredible this final was. The C2 is an overall success for AEW.
I think that would be the general sentiment most out. I thought it was as we spoke about earlier this week, I thought it was a tremendous first tournament for them, and I think that it sets the expectations that much higher for next year.
Agreed. Let's go to our phone calls, and of course we open these phone lines up for all Post Wrestling Cafe patrons. PostWrestlingCafe.com is where you can get our bonus shows, our entire archive of over 1,000 bonus shows. You get podcasts with John and I, ad free, commercial free. You get Rewind a SmackDown exclusively on Fridays, and next week you will be getting our Wrestle Kingdom 18 review on Thursday, I believe.
Yes, Thursday we're going to be doing a show with Bruce Lord, the 3 of us, reviewing Wrestle Kingdom 18, and that will be available exclusively for Post Wrestling Cafe members up at postwrestlingcafe.com. And also, as a bonus for Cafe members, next Sunday night at 8 Eastern, we're going to be going live with our best and worst of show for 2023 with Braden Harrington and Davey Portman. Now, if you want to wait till the following day, it will be up for everybody. But if you want to join us live in the chat and have a lot of fun with our picks and everything, live Sunday night, 8 Eastern, for all members of the Post Wrestling Cafe.
And joining us for that Wrestle Kingdom review will be our first caller here, our New Japan Pro Wrestling reviewer, Bruce Lord. Welcome to the show, Bruce.
Evening, guys. Yeah, very much looking forward to talking about the crossroads that New Japan is at with you guys in a few days. But as I think tonight's show proved, AEW is also a company that is very much at a crossroads. And as a result, I think kind of like Full Gear, this was a much more of a mixed AEW pay-per-view than we are normally used to, but I think for very different reasons. As far as the elephant in the room goes, I hope that the reporters in the room are actually asking trenchant questions about this and kind of holding Tony's feet to the fire and not just the usual, when are you coming to Detroit again, or whatever it might be. I hope that if there is a problem, if there is a situation, I hope that it's handled better there than it has been in other companies. And I also hope that if there are allegations being made or allegations being raised, that they're being done with the kind of consent and agreement of any of the aggrieved parties, and not just because people are getting into arguments on social media, because using those sorts of things just to win an online argument is not cool and not okay. But leaving that aside, as far as the actual substance of this goes, I think I'm pretty much in agreement with you. Kind of heading into those last three matches, my friends, my brother and I who were watching the show were just kind of thinking, oh man, they got to pull some stuff out here in the last moments. And I absolutely had complete faith in the C2 finish, and boy howdy did that ever deliver. I think that, Tony's comments on the pre-show media call about using concrete ratings data emerging from the C2 to shape the company moving forward, very encouraging to folks like myself who've kind of been disappointed in some of the AEW main event programming. Yet the fact that not just the finish to this tournament, but the tournament overall was something that seemed to come basically out of nowhere with such little fanfare, with not a lot of announcement as to who the participants were. And yet it built towards a finish that felt as organic, as satisfying, as perfect and ideal as this. Going into it, I was perfectly fine with either man winning. There were so many stories, so many, future possibilities, not just for them, but for everybody else in the tournament. It's hard not to at least hold out some sort of hope for AEW kind of turning things around after the very rough patch that they've been going through for the past few months, when you have something as positive as the C2 now in the books. And I think, it really gives a lot of hope to those of us who were hoping for AEW to be something markedly different than the existing product on American television. So that was, I thought they absolutely nailed the landing. Obviously hats off to both guys. Just a fantastic match. To your point, Way, about just the MJF finish, not only did I think the finish to that match was like a great, kind of, putting the shine on a spot that we never expect to pay off, but it also, I think, is a nice almost make good for those of us who've been kind of complaining about how, sort of Super Cena or Hogan like so many of the MJF matches have been, right? The idea that no, just all of the damage, all of the accrual of the assaults and beatdowns, and Joe choking him out, and the beatdown from the Putty Patrol a couple of days ago, the fact that all of those things added up to finally take MJF down, that's a satisfying and logical conclusion to this story. I don't really care about the reveal of who it is. It spins the title away from this business, and the MJF and Cole verse can kind of play itself out as it does. We have all sorts of exciting new possibilities for title matches moving forward. So at least as far as all of that goes, kind of a bit of a bumpy road to get here and a bit of a bumpy pay-per-view, but kind of finished well, and I'm optimistic about where things are going from here on out.
Thank you, Bruce. And we look forward to chatting with you on Thursday after Wrestle Kingdom and many more hours of pro wrestling.
Me as well, guys. Take care and have a good New Year.
All right. Thank you, Bruce. Just some notes from the press conference, and this is coming courtesy of Brandon Thurston. Nothing too significant here, but Tony Khan reiterated that it was a sellout tonight, expects over 100,000 buys for this pay-per-view, and did confirm some of the people moving on. Said wishing QT Marshall the best of luck, confirmed that Andrade's contract is up and he's leaving AEW on good terms, and also congratulated Raphael Morphy, who's their live events executive, who is also finishing up tonight.
Let's go up next to Andy B. Welcome, Andy.
Hi guys, how are you? Wanted to wish you a happy New Year.
Thank you. You too.
Guys, so I wanted to say a bit of a mixed bag with this show. I wasn't particularly invested in any of the matches other than the last three, and I thought the crowd kind of reflected that. But however, my takeaway from this night is pretty positive because I was there for Eddie versus John Moxley, and I thought those guys delivered in spades. It's very rare that you get to see this sort of cathartic moment that's been festering around for some time, and then it plays out. And I just thought it was incredible. I think this was, I think this was just like this incredible moment that I've been looking forward to for so long, and it's hard not to feel great for Eddie Kingston, who's had this unbelievable year, who's gone to Japan, competed in the G1, checked off so many personal milestones. What do you guys see coming off his reign as Triple Crown champion?
So after he loses the belt.
No. What do you guys think? How do you guys think this run plays out? Like, do you see him being this champion who's defending across promotions? What do you think? How do you think this plays out?
I mean, that's sort of the idea, right? Like he's already scheduled for Battle in the Valley, I believe, is the next New Japan show.
It's on the
North
13th.
America, right? And as far as his ROH activity, I suppose that remains to be seen. But I expect him to be pretty active this year. But as far as like who, somebody might have brought up Swerve in the chat room, and because Swerve is obviously not going to be facing MJF, I also don't know if I see him facing Samoa Joe as a heel. I could see Kingston and Swerve as a possibility.
Fair enough. I think that'd be interesting, guys. So, I just wanted to comment on the Devil reveal a little bit. I think while like Joe finishing was like quite a nice moment for the show, I was a bit wishy-washy on the actual Devil reveal because that Brochacho story I was really in love with when it first happened, and like I really came to love that pairing of MJF and Adam Cole. So whenever that breakup was going to happen, it was always going to be like this heartbreaking moment, and I think it was just rooted in a genuine human emotion. But by throwing like this devil stuff at it and all of these unnecessary layers, I feel like you've kind of diluted what should have been like such an organic, like heated feud. Like it feels pretty disappointing. Where do you guys fall on that?
So remind me, like when was the Devil introduced? Before or after Cole's injury?
Little bit before, I think.
Okay, interesting. Clearly they were looking for a mystery to draw viewers in, and setting up a reveal that was that much bigger. I don't hate whodunits. I just like to see them executed well, and you can make the argument that this wasn't executed all that well throughout.
I think you have to reserve judgment too on like where the program goes now based on the follow-up. Now you've done the reveal, you've gotten through that. Now it's time to get into kind of the meat and potatoes of a feud that has to probably be on the back burner for quite a while before you can get to the match. And Cole's promo, like Cole should have a big promo on Wednesday.
Well, he has to, for one thing, he has to explain why he helped another man win the championship rather than either himself if he's healthy or one of his associates. Maybe that might be a first and foremost sort of like, I guess, logic gap, but I'm sure they'll address it. Let's go up next to Brian. Thank you, Andy, for the call. Hey, Brian, what's up?
Hey guys, yeah, happy New Year. Thank you for the review tonight, and also that top-notch review of Backlash 2007. And
Thank you.
Rest in peace to Mad Kurt. But yeah, this pay-per-view reminded me in general of Double or Nothing this year, in that it started pretty fun, ended strong with the remaining matches. In the case of tonight, the final 3, or technically 4, but pretty average overall for the bulk of the show in the middle. Nothing really stood out to me in a good way, outside of Swerve Strickland and how he carried himself. He's just on fire now. But then Christian and Copeland happened, and that was just so hot. I really liked how that all was done. Kingston versus Moxley was my match of the night, and a great end to this first Continental Classic. And they made mention that they're definitely doing another one next year. And I like the main event and closing angle. Samoa Joe winning the world title is really the side story of this MJF saga.
Yeah.
I don't know how long he's going to hold the title. What? Sorry.
Oh, I'm saying unfortunately, like really kind of overshadowed by the end of the night.
Yeah, definitely unfortunately. But I've been a fan of his for close to 20 years, even with all the bad TV booking he's encountered. So I'm very happy Joe has gone from King of Television to AEW World Champion. And I'm satisfied with the reveal. Wasn't expecting Cole given his injury, but given how MJF state of things, he could heal up, and then Cole could have time to heal up as MJF fights his associates. And not only can the Masked Goons stop being Masked Goons, but Roderick Strong, the Kingdom, can pretty much stop being clowns from the looks of it. No neck brace, none of that. So
That would have been a bit of a giveaway.
Promising.
The neck brace with the mask, I think, would have been a bit of a giveaway. But we'll see.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
hope so. Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, absolutely, yeah, and also reunion of the truly original Kingdom of ROH, which started with Cole and Bennett with Maria, and then they brought in Taven. Just saying that. So thanks again, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
So just going back to the presser, so it was brought up and Tony Khan was asked, is Chris Jericho or was he under any kind of investigation? And Tony Khan's response was that he can't speak to internet unsourced rumors and repeated about safety and open doors in AEW. So it looks like he is not going to go into any kind of discussion over this. But I mean, based on that answer, I mean, you can take from it what you will.
Well, thank you to whoever asked that question.
Yes, it was very important, and that these questions be asked. And applause to those that brought this up. Absolutely.
Let's go up next to Muggin. Hey, Muggin.
The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
The devil is a lie. Yes.
That's a Rick Ross song, so I had to say that. Anyway, yeah, I had to. Maybe that music. Anyway, the main event was okay. I'm very happy that Joe became world champion. And the devil reveal, look, sometimes predictable is the best option they have, and they pulled the trigger with Cole, reunited with the Kingdom and Roddy, and having Wardlow as a stable for MJF to fight to face when he heals up from his sabbatical. And there's another takeaway from this. I'm glad Roddy is going to ditch the neck brace, and he's going to stop being he's going to stop quoting a streetcar named Desire.
I didn't realize he was doing that.
Yeah, because the way he calls Adam's name, it was very reminiscent of Brando calling Stella.
Okay. Yes.
And Copeland and Cage was great. The post match really took me out of it because with Killswitch winning the Battle Royal on 0 Hour, I figured maybe that Killswitch would cash it in and turn on Christian anyway because that story has yet to find a payoff, and now they're right back where they started.
Well, you could still pay that off in the future. For now, though, they are in the middle of the Christian Adam Copeland storyline, and again, I think there's a trilogy to be had here. So the kill switch thing is still very much in play. I just think they're trying to maybe let it simmer while your Adam Copeland and Christian feud, finishes. I'm sure there's a big role left for him in all of this.
I hope, because I mean it's been going on for a year plus, and that really that did sound me a little bit. But to me, the match of the night was Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley. Because to me, Eddie's comeback during the C2 was like the best story going. It was the best story because he bounced back from 0-2, and he avenges the losses to Bryan and to Moxley. Because the two matches he had with Moxley during COVID, including the I Quit match, is still fresh in my head.
Yeah.
And to me, the self-loathing anger of the world, Eddie Kingston died in that match.
We'll see.
And he grew up. This whole Continental Classic was Eddie Kingston's maturity, manifesting. And now he has 3 championships. So it's
Thank you, Muggin, for the call. Appreciate it. Take care.
Appreciate it, Muggin. Thank you.
Let's go up next to Hansi, our last call of the evening. Hey, Hansi.
What's going on, man? I was okay with the devil reveal. I thought I put a wild prediction that I thought it was going to be Tony Khan, and then it was going to be like an accumulation of everyone that he pissed off. And I thought it was going to be because I thought the Tribune article, I know he was like giving credit to AEW, but for some reason I thought also it came off like a finale of AEW kind of in a way.
Could be interpreted.
I thought like. But apparently he resigned, so I'm off on that. But I'm okay with the Adam Cole thing as long as they explain that if they do the Bully Ray explanation of like the Aces of 8 stuff, because the Aces of 8 stuff was kind of like silly, but then Bully Ray at least put it together in that one episode. I thought the Edge and Christian match was really good. I liked it. It fits in the theme of Edge's career. He didn't win a championship since coming back in any company. He won it and he got taken away. And I thought redoing that to bringing back like his 2006 trope, whatever. I thought it worked out, even though it kind of came off random, whatever. But I still liked it, and I liked that Christian's still making the title feel important because for the last 6 months he's rebuilt that title with Luchasaurus's reign and now his reign, and now getting desperate with that. And finally, the last match, the Kingston Moxley match was really, really good. Probably my favorite match of the night, whatever. The next time that they, if they're gonna if they do announce a deal, streaming deal, whatever, or if they have a more organized effort to do this tournament, I would actually like the semifinals to be on a pay-per-view and then the finals. Do you think if they focus the build for one pay-per-view build for this Continental Classic, and you have a good portion dedicated to it, I think people will be happy because it'll be more wrestling orientated. So do you guys see that they organize it more where the accumulation becomes an annual thing for maybe its own special or at one of the pay-per-views? And I'll take your comments off here. Happy New Year. Peace out, guys.
Thank you,
Same
Hansi.
to you,
Happy New
Hansi.
Year.
I don't think AEW pay-per-views have a problem with having heavy wrestling content. I kind of like the separation. I don't need to. I think it's challenging enough when we see these G1s where you've got to do your A and B block finals, and then for the B block they have to come back the next day and do a huge final. And to ask them to do that in the same night at the level that the audience wants, just imagine Kingston and Danielson doing that match tonight and then coming back with him and Moxley. I think you want to separate them. It also, for all we talk about, people that don't get spots on the pay-per-view, I mean, then you're taking up more spots with fewer people. I thought the way that they did it was, I think this way was preferable to at least, have the round robin and playoffs on TV and build to the final.
Let's go right now to forum.postwrestling.com for some of your feedback, and we might have to cut the show a bit shorter, so we might not get to everybody's feedback.
Okay. We're going to go to Dustin from Maui. It was a great show overall. I'm just glad that the Devil storyline is over. It looks like MJF might be taking a break to recover after the clean loss. So was Samoa Joe working with Adam Cole, Wardlow, and Kingdom the whole time? Well, that's the idea, was that he recently struck a deal with, he got the title out of it, and he was able to assist their desires.
It was a pleasure working with you. Yeah,
that was it. Yes. I think they made that clear, that distinction, that Joe is not part of this group.
And it was Cole who encouraged MJF to partner with Joe, I believe.
Yes. Yes.
We got a Cody from Maine who says the typically bloated pay-per-view card with an atypically disinterested crowd until the last 3 matches. Miro Andrade was DOA. Swerve did not need to go nearly 10 minutes with Dustin after pulverizing his ankle. That should have been a promo segment that ended with that spot. And then there's Chris Jericho. It cast a dark cloud over this event, and they couldn't shake until the final 3 matches. I love the finish to Copeland and Cage to continue both their stories. The C2 final was everything it needed to be, with Danielson amplifying the presentation tenfold. What a year for Kingston after being seemingly relegated to ROH. I love the shock finish of the main event. Joe's finish has always been treated seriously, and with the injuries, they've touted for Max. He finally ran out of steam. All in all, middle of the road pay-per-view that joins a few others in being overshadowed by events out of the ring.
All right. I'm going to skip over Mark's, because Mark goes pretty extensively here into his opinions and thoughts on the Jericho story. And I don't discourage people from going to read this, but a lot of this is his opinions of such. And I really don't want to get into the weeds about a lot of these specifics. So if people want to read this, you can go onto the forum. John from Montana: keeping Jericho on the show made that show feel really awkward. He goes on, Copeland and Christian was the real standout of the pay-per-view. I'm hoping that with taking the belt off of MJF is to allow him some time to rest and recover. I really like the match. Devil Angle played out basically the way we all thought. An underwhelming pay-per-view overall.
Okay. All right, let's go up next to Jay from Colorado. Match of the night was Christian versus Copeland. It's amazing to watch 2 guys who were medically retired 5 years ago work as good as the younger guys. I enjoyed MJF and Joe, but was completely surprised by the ending. Not the double thing, as I think we all expected it to be Adam, but the way MJF lost. I didn't love it, but I do enjoy being surprised, and that definitely surprised me. 7 out of 10 show for me.
Andrew from Cape Breton. So I made the mistake of buying the pay-per-view on my cable service provider without realizing that the power grid in Cape Breton is held together by duct tape and prayers, as my power went out during the Copeland cage match. It actually is back on now. From what I did watch, I thought the show was fine, but colored too much by the Jericho match. I would argue it's the worst match in AEW history, despite the efforts of everyone involved. The fact that they let Jericho wrestle after everything that went on today might be the worst thing AEW has ever done, and I'm including everything that went on with CM Punk. I guess I'm biased, as one of the tweets that Kylie Ray liked was one that I made. Goes on to say, it felt like all the goodwill they built up from the Continental Classic died tonight. It may have been one of the worst pay-per-view experiences.
Thank you, everybody, for your feedback. Certainly, big topic of the show was Chris Jericho, and not necessarily some of the other storyline things, or at least I should say one of the big stories coming out of this. So I imagine we'll get a lot more follow-up, at least from discourse, over the next week.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very tricky topic to see like how much it is going to be addressed, because I mean, it's like tonight they will be in front of the media, but then it will be it's really hard to say like if like how much focus and attention this will receive and what the next steps are moving forward. But I was very happy to see that it was at least brought up at the press conference with Tony Khan. All right, that's going to wrap us up. Wai and I are back on Monday night with Rewind to Raw. And after this past week, our schedule is pretty well back to normal this week. So with all of the big shows coming up this week, we'll have myself and Wai after the day one edition of Raw Monday, and then Brandon Davey up Tuesday after New Year's Evil. Thurston and I are back Wednesday, and we're going to be joined by Chris Samsa ahead of Wrestle Kingdom 18, and we'll be talking about all of the fallout from Worlds Collide as well. And if you have made it this far into the review, all we ask, please like and subscribe here on the channel at youtube.com/postwrestling. We appreciate all of our listeners out there, whether you're on the cafe or just simply want to subscribe here to the channel and hear our wonderful voices multiple times per week. So that is it. Have a wonderful New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, everybody, and we'll speak with you on Monday night.